This event is truly one of my favorite events in the world. And I think that the way that they put this on and the amount of information and the things that you can learn in such a short period of time, only 3 days, can literally be almost like a college course. Do you agree? I mean, and I don't want to put like a bad label on college courses because I missed a lot of mine. That's okay. I was doing TV, radio, and film, so we can. Doesn't matter. But anyway, here, today, right now, in this room, you are going to hear one of my dear friends. We had a chance to first meet back at the Raw Spirit Festival 2 years ago. We'd sent some emails back and forth, and we managed to really kind of strike up a nice friendship, and we spent New Year's down in Mexico, and we did a live broadcast like on a whim, and we had like 200 people spending New Year's with us. Just almost instantly, we played guitar, sang, Matt fell asleep. And what I really, really appreciate about Matt is that he's real straightforward, he's real honest, he's got a great and amazing heart, and he does this because he loves to do it. And so what you're going to get today is a message from the heart of someone who really loves what he's doing and really cares about each one of you. So, Matt Monarch.
Thank you, Kevin. Oh, wow, that's awesome. Okay. We got both going on? All right. All right. So I've got a lot of information to like give you guys in a very short amount of time. So I'm going to go quick. And I'm not going to take any questions. Maybe at the end if we have some extra time here. Okay, how many people in the room here have healed from a degenerative disease or a condition of any sort by adhering to a better lifestyle? Look at that. It's amazing. How many people are 100% raw in the room? Like completely 100%. Okay, so you can see like a massive amount of people raise their hands to heal from a certain condition or ailment. And not everyone here is 100% raw. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to teach you pretty much how to go raw, how to heal from disease, or how to be healthy without taking to such an extreme, like on an intermediate, healthy, whole food, cooked food diet. You don't need to be 100% raw to be healthy. You don't need to take it to such an extreme that, people like I have. You can be very healthy without going that far. So today, the information I'm going to give you, I hope will empower you to be able to take it to that next level by understanding a lot of these concepts.
I personally could hear you better if it was less echoey or quieter in here. I don't know what.
How about, you mean like this? No? Okay, like that. Maybe that's a little bit better. Okay, cool. I'll use this. Okay, so why is the raw food diet so great? I mean, besides having the ability to heal from practically any condition on the planet, why is it so good? If you read all the books out there, they say they're alive, they have enzymes, and these are all great things. But in my opinion, the number one benefit of the 100% raw food diet that blows all other benefits out of the water is when you adhere to a 100% raw food diet, you're actually eliminating the foods that damage the body. You just get rid of them. It's actually more important what you don't eat than what you actually eat. I mean, you could eat raw foods and superfoods until you're the blue in the face. You're not going to get better unless you eliminate the cause, which are certain processed foods. And we're going to go into detail on what these are today. And I also kind of like to go back and forth between advanced stuff and beginner stuff. So we're going to do it all today. So anybody can nourish themselves. I mean, someone could be going to McDonald's 3 times a day, and they can be having a couple vegetable juices every single day, and there's a good chance they may be getting all the nourishment they need. But why aren't they succeeding? Because they're eating these processed foods that are actually damaging their bodies. It's all about what foods are obstructive to the body. In other words, what foods are damaging to the body. And I'm going to start out right now with an advanced curveball for you guys. Keep an open mind. All food is obstructive to the body. All food is damaging to the body, even raw food. I know this sounds crazy because if 99% of the population went on a 100% raw food diet right now, they'd start becoming younger and younger and regenerating at a rapid rate, healing from conditions. But let me give you another perspective. Myself, for example, I went on a 100% raw food diet 11 years ago. I didn't have any health challenges. And when I did this overnight, I started regenerating. I started becoming younger at such a rapid pace, I could not believe it. But then what happened was, after about year 7, I detoxed all this waste out of my body. I kind of caught up with what I was doing, and I noticed something. I started to age on the raw food diet. I mean, everybody ages. It's inevitable. But what was aging me? I know there's many factors out there, but one of the main factors was the food. A little more advanced stuff for you. Becoming younger happens when you start to permanently improve your diet by eating less damaging kinds and quantities of food. When you do this on a consistent basis, permanently, this is when you start to regenerate and become younger. And then what happens, at some point, you catch up with what you're doing, you detox all this stuff out of you, and then you start to age again, but at a slower pace, I mean. So for me, for example, right now, I could actually cut all my meals in half right now on my raw food diet, and what would happen was I would start to become younger again, and I would start to detox and regenerate more and more. And you can keep going further and further. So that's some advanced stuff for you, and we'll go back and forth between this stuff. So the real question is, it's all about what foods are least obstructive to the body. What foods, in other words, are least damaging to the body? And the answer is raw food. I mean, if you think about it, an apple is pretty much just water with vitamins and minerals in it. When you eat it, it's like eating water practically, and it doesn't tax the digestive system barely at all, and it doesn't tax the body barely. It's not that damaging to the body, whereas most processed foods out there are. So it's all about what foods are less obstructive. For example, a raw food diet is less obstructive than the standard American diet. An intermediate, healthy, whole foods, cooked food diet is less obstructive than the standard American diet. A raw food diet is less obstructive than both of those. Eating 1 pound of figs is less obstructive than eating 6 pounds of figs. Eating a simple salad is less obstructive than going to a raw food restaurant, having 2 appetizers, 3 entrees, and like 4 desserts. Or 2 cups of agave, 1 cup of coconut. Okay. So again, you don't need to be 100% raw to be healthy. However, there are certain foods that you want to leave out of your diet completely without exception whatsoever for ultimate health. There are a lot of diets out there. I'm sure you've heard of many of them, such as the Zone diet, the Macrobiotics diet, the Maker's diet, the Blood Type diet, the South Beach diet. And all the creators of these diets, they claim to get results. And to be honest with you, I've actually seen people adhere to a lot of these diets, and I've seen people get results. I've seen people heal from disease by adhering to these diets, and I've seen people lose weight. And there's one common denominator on why all these diets succeed. And that common denominator is they all leave certain foods out of their diets completely without any exception whatsoever. And the crazy thing about it all, they all leave the same exact foods out. It's not rocket science here. I mean, some have rules like you can't eat this type of food for that type of blood type, or you can't eat past this day of the time, or you can't have this type of vegetable. But essentially, they all leave out the same foods, which is crazy. So what are these foods that are so damaging to the body? I like to break down the foods into the following food groups. We got them right here. I wrote them down earlier. We've got refined sugar, processed starches, animal protein, dairy, and raw food. So if we understand that what you leave out of your diet completely without exception is the way to ultimate health, we want to leave out the foods that are the most damaging to the body. And there are 2 tied for the top that are the most damaging. And they are actually at the top, right here. See, a lot of people think it's the other way around. Some people think it's the animal protein and dairy, and people go on a vegan diet They eliminate the things that are less damaging to their bodies, and they load up on the stuff that's more damaging to them. Now, don't get me wrong, I have an animal activist inside of me, and I don't like to see people eat animal protein, but from a scientific standpoint, the animal protein is less damaging to the body than these two things right here. Cow's milk, go talk to Howard Lyman about that one. Maybe some raw goat's milk products, cheese. It's a little mucus forming, but it could be very healthy with a lot of good nutrients in there. So just so we're all on the same page, let's go over what refined sugars and processed starches are. Refined sugars are pretty much anything with processed sugar. Any type of sugar that's been processed over 118 degrees. Like white sugar, any type of, that's in cookies, candies, soda pop, cake, and all those other things. I mean, that you just want to get rid of. Refined sugars is probably the easiest thing to give up because of the most amazing foods on the raw foods market now that are just, sweets. You can even just eat fruit. So now processed starches, probably the most damaging food and the hardest to give up and the most addictive. Who here can name a processed starch? Pasta, and I heard someone say bread. Potato chips. Baked potato, bread. I was having dreams about bread for like 3 months after I went raw. Seriously, like probably more than that. Like buffet tables of baked items and bagels and bread. That was the hardest thing for me to give up. And it's probably the most damaging to the body. I like to tell people to replace bread for lettuce if you can. Like instead of having an animal protein sandwich, have a salad. Salads are key on this type of diet, or any diet. Just eat lots of salads. That's a really good way to ultimate health. Okay, so all these diets that I was mentioning earlier, now, a lot of them use the animal protein, and also there are certain starches that are wheat and gluten-free. The part of the processed starch that's really damaging is the gluten. So a lot of them use wheat and gluten-free products, and on these intermediate diets, you can do things like this. And what those consist of, there's many out there, and I'll just name them all. There's quinoa. You could sprout it or steam it. Millet, wheat and gluten-free. Buckwheat. I've actually seen wheat and gluten-free pastas on the market. I know Tinkiata pasta is a brand. I've actually even seen brown rice and beans on these types of diets. I've seen a baked potato, which is gluten-free on these types of diets. Now, a baked potato, you don't want to put margarine on there, but maybe coconut oil. I've seen steamed vegetables on these types of diets, and you can live off of all these foods and be very healthy and degenerative disease-free, God willing, to a very old age. Steamed lentils I've seen. They always eliminate the red meat. Chicken, fish, turkey, hopefully avoiding all hormones and grass-fed, organic, all that fun stuff. Cow's milk, gone. All right. So, food combining. Now, all raw food, if eaten in moderate quantities, go together pretty good. I mean, if you eat fruit with fat, you might have a little more gas than if you didn't. But honestly, in my opinion, all raw foods combine well. Food combining really comes into play when you're dealing with the cooked foods. And that's where we got to be careful. The processed starches and the animal proteins. And when I'm talking about the processed starches, we're talking about the quinoa, the millet, the buckwheat, all those other foods that are wheat and gluten-free also. You either do one or the other. You don't want to mix animal protein with these processed starches. You either have the salad with the animal protein or the salad with the quinoa, buckwheat, millet, Tinkiata pasta, or one of those things. Those two together, you're like defeating the purpose. It causes so much fermentation and waste in the body, it's like defeating the purpose. So the foods that I just mentioned, it's kind of like an intermediate healthy whole food cooked food diet that we discussed. If you can just eat those foods that we just mentioned and eliminate all others, that's the key right there. That you got the diet part down. Now there are a few other concepts that we got to go over because a lot of things happen after you do something like that. A lot of people, they come up to me, they tell me they're 70% raw, 80% raw, 90% raw. And this doesn't mean much to me because they could be eating 70% raw while doing 30% pizza, candy, soda, cake, and all these other wonderful things. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could do more raw foods and less of the other stuff and do better, but you're not going to do nearly as good as you can be doing if you eliminate certain foods completely from your diet without any exception whatsoever. When you do this, this is when you start to heal from disease. This is when you start to transform on a cellular level. This is when your body becomes a more in tune, receptive machine to that spiritual energy. Yeah. The number one reason why I stay raw today, and which I was not expecting whatsoever, is this energy that is coming through this body now. It's profound. I was never into a spiritual lifestyle. And in a little bit, I'm going to go into this, but there's a few more concepts that I have to go over real quick. So unless you eliminate certain foods completely without exception from your diet, you're not going to take it to the next level. For example, if you take a heroin addict that does their drug every single day, and then they quit completely, but they do it once every 2 weeks, that drug is going to stay in their system, and it's not going anywhere. And it's the same thing with the refined sugars and processed starches. Unless you eliminate them completely, they're going to stay in your system on a cellular level, and you're going to have the cravings, and they're not going to go away. Another reason why this is so beneficial, when you eliminate the refined sugars and processed starches, not only will the toxins that are created from these foods disappear, but other toxins that would not have left will also leave. So now you're just becoming cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And cleaner and cleaner, and your body's just pushing you forward. And at some point, like, you're going to be, like, you eliminate refined sugars and processed starches, you start becoming younger depending on your age and weight, anywhere from like 5 to 20 years. And at some point, you're going to catch up with your new diet because now your body's even just throwing more toxins out that would not have left. And then you're going to become so clean, you might wake up in the morning with like a runny nose. And it's like your body is saying, you know what, it's time to take to the next level. Get rid of that wheat and gluten-free pasta. I don't, or deal with the runny nose and not do that. But this is what happens. You go to deep cleanliness when you start eliminating certain foods completely without exception. Okay. When you go on a raw food diet, you are eliminating more foods from your diet than if you went on an intermediate, healthy, whole food, cooked food diet. Does that make sense? So the more you leave out of your diet completely without exception, 3 things happen. The more you leave out of your diet completely, without exception, the more you're going to detoxify and cleanse. The more you leave out of your diet completely, without exception, the more sensitive you're going to become to past food choices and toxins, such as pollution and other chemicals and fun stuff like that. And lastly, the more you leave out of your diet completely, without exception, the more in tune you become to that spiritual energy. And we're going to go over all 3 right now. The more you leave out of your diet completely, without exception, the more you're going to cleanse and detoxify. In my opinion, the most misunderstood concept in not only the raw foods movement, but the entire health food movement is detoxification. The most cleansing thing that anybody can do is a water fast, because you're eliminating everything from your diet but water. And you're advised to lie in bed with your eyes closed as you cleanse, cleanse, cleanse. Now, when you go on a raw food diet, you're eliminating everything from your diet but the most water-rich, easy-to-digest foods. Remember, an apple is simply just water with vitamins and minerals in it. Now, before I say what I'm about to say, keep in mind, we've been eating poorly our entire lives, decades on hand. And not only that, what our ancestors have been eating and what their ancestors have been eating, and when they reproduce, they give off their toxic cells to their children and their children. So when you go on a raw food diet, you're practically eating a solid water fast with some more concentrated foods such as nuts and seeds. But it is literally, that's why it's called the detox diet. It is seriously like going on a lifelong fast. And you're going to cleanse and detoxify for the rest of your life. As crazy as that might sound, when you do this, it's like going back to, we're trying to bring it back to the roots hundreds of years ago before our ancestors. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to tell you how to deal with the detoxification, but it's not all necessarily negative. It's a lot of beneficial stuff, which we're going to go over also. I mean, how many people here decided to go on a 100% raw food diet overnight, and all of a sudden this happens to them, like, oh my God. Like, okay, not as extreme, but have you ever seen a movie where they took a heroin addict, they throw him in the hospital, and they force him to abstain from their drug, and they start going absolutely nuts, kicking and screaming all over the place? Not as extreme, but it's kind of physiologically the same exact thing when you go on a raw food diet. Okay. So what happens is, here we are, we have all these toxins running through our bloodstream. We're not really understanding what's going on. And before you know it, we're just like directed to our past food choices. We want to do the raw food diet, but what's going on? Why aren't we succeeding? We want to feel good. And what happens is we eat our past food choices. And what happens is when you eat your past food choice, what this does is it stops the harsh detoxification. So you eat your past food choice and you're like, oh, raw food? Who needs that? And not only does it stop the harsh detoxification, but it stimulates you. So now you're just like flying high, and then you start eating your past food choices until you fall in that rut again. And you're like, okay, let's try the raw food diet one more time. Okay, I've worked with a lot of parents, and a lot of the times they want to improve their diets while at the same time improving their children's diets. Now, children, in my opinion, are really connected individuals, working, like, acting every last bit of their beings out. Like, so what happens is every incident, even when they weren't even trying to abstain from being 100% raw, a high raw diet, or even an intermediate healthy whole food cooked food diet, when they force their children not to eat those foods also with the parents, in every incident I have ever seen, those kids are acting out and kicking and screaming just like the heroin addict, crying their eyeballs out, wanting their past food choices. Well, us unconnected adults are like, what's going on? We're just like walking around, oh, here's a fast food choice. Ah, thank you very much. Okay. Now, this next subject that I'm going to talk about is very dear to me. How do we deal with the detoxification? What I'm about to tell you, nothing detoxifies and cleanses the body more effectively than this procedure I'm about to tell you. No fiber supplement, no sauna, no foot soaks, no salt flush. All these things are great, but compared to this, colon hydrotherapy, cleansing the colon, what every health food institute uses to help heal people from degenerative diseases because of how effective it is, nothing detoxifies the body more effectively than colon hydrotherapy. Those other things are like way down there. This is like way up there. This is like the deal breaker for a lot of people. I have seen people where they just slightly improve their diets and they're willing to do the periodic colon hydrotherapy, and they healed based off of that. 70 years ago, before the big pharmaceutical companies came in, every single hospital room had either an enema machine or a colonic machine. It is documented in every hospital room. It was the first measure that they ever used to help heal someone from anything because of how effective it is. But then the pharmaceutical companies came in, they wanted you to pay money for their drugs, and you weren't allowed, they didn't want you doing the colonics and healing. All disease is the same. It's this, when you eat poor food choices, a lot of waste is generated in the body. And what happens is this waste builds up and this disease builds up, and then it tries to exit. It might come out of your skin on your face as it's acne, or someone might get psoriasis, or someone gets bronchitis and they can't stand that feeling. It hurts so much. What is that? I mean, you think you're sick? It's waste trying to come out of the body. But what we do is we want to get rid of that, and what we do is we eat pharmaceutical drugs. It takes the pain away, and it suppresses that, when all it does is it wants to come out. And when we do that, we continue to eat our poor food choices, bringing in more and more waste to add to that monster, which starts to get bigger and bigger, and it gets suppressed, and it comes later in a worser form. Nothing removes waste, disease, better than more effectively than colon hydrotherapy. There's just nothing out there. I've seen example after example where people instantaneously, they notice immediate results. There's this one woman who had pneumonia. She was going on antibiotics. She worked for my company. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just go get a colonic and see what happens. We went to go get a colonic. We got back in the car. Instantaneously, she was like, she couldn't believe it. It was like instantaneous. And I'm not crazy, but I'm not saying get colonics every single day of your life or whatever. Ironically, the more you leave out of your diet completely without exception, the more often we should cleanse our colon. I mean, most people are like, you're on a raw food diet. This is the ideal diet in the world. Why do you need colon hydrotherapy? Come on, blah, 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 blah. Because of how cleansing it is. You start to really cleanse. I know some people, like someone on a standard American diet who has the big belly, they go on a raw food diet, they lose 50 pounds, they have all this energy. And what happens is they refuse to do the colon hydrotherapy. As the months go by, you notice like their energy starts to fall away. And all of a sudden their faces start to get older and older and older. They're like bathing in their own waste. For a person like this, I'd say either do the colon hydrotherapy and take it to the next level, or get off the cleansing raw food diet and take a step back, and so you don't cleanse as much. Nothing detoxifies and cleanses the body more effectively than colon hydrotherapy. I mean, some people, they get a colonic, they're like, Matt, I did a colonic. What's the big deal? Nothing miraculous happened. Okay, don't get me wrong, it's always good to do a colonic. But if a lot of people aren't willing to do something like this, so the best time that I would want you to do it, just so you notice the results, is when if you're inspired today and you're actually going to take steps by eliminating certain foods completely without exception whatsoever, and now you know what the most damaging ones are, refined sugars and processed starches, and if you do that forever, you decide to make the lifestyle change by eliminating certain foods completely without exception, when you actually do this, and then when you can't go anymore, when you go through the healing crisis, when you eliminate certain foods from your diet, you're going to go through a healing crisis. It's just a matter of time. So when you got the zits on your face, you got the runny nose, you go to the doctor, they say you need antibiotics, and the doctor goes, raw foods, colon hydrotherapy. Are you crazy? You're going to kill yourself. This is the time to do the colon hydrotherapy, and I guarantee you're going to have miraculous results, just like that woman with pneumonia. There was this one man at one of my talks, he was on an intermediate healthy whole food cooked food diet. He's like, man, I would never do colon hydrotherapy. You're crazy. I'm like, all right. He heard me speak. 2 weeks later, he emails me saying, Matt, I did the colon hydrotherapy. Seriously, it was like a dead rat came out of my body. He said, that day, my urine turned from yellow to white overnight. My hair started growing back fuller, and it took my cravings away where I was able to take my health to the next level. Profound. I can give you example after example after example of colon hydrotherapy. I mean, I've seriously talked about colon hydrotherapy for hours before, but I don't have much time. I'm about to actually finish the colon hydrotherapy up right now. But I was at an event like this. There was over 200 people in the room, and I spoke for colon hydrotherapy for an hour. And this woman comes up to me. She's like, Matt, I always have this mucus right here. I'm on a 100% raw food diet, and so I'm like asking her, I'm like, did you overdo the fat? No. Did you overdo the fruit? No. Do you snack in between meals? Meaning, do you finish one meal, wait for it to completely digest, and then eat again? Yeah, she was doing everything right. I do vegetable juice. I do enzymes. I'm like, I know she does colon hydrotherapy because I talked about it for an hour. She wouldn't be asking me this question, So I'm like, do you ever do colon hydrotherapy? Have you ever cleansed your colon? No. I'm like thinking, did you just not hear me speak for an hour? So if anybody has any questions after this event, the answer is go get a colonic. Seriously. It's always that. Cleanse the colon. Now, how often should we do colon hydrotherapy? Now, when I talk to a lot of colon therapists, they're my biggest followers a lot of the time because of what I'm talking about. And they'd say when a person on the standard American diet gets on their table, they are working so hard and like barely anything comes out. When a raw foodist gets on that table, it is insane for the entire hour, and like they have to go more than an hour in like 15 minutes. Like stuff is just pouring out of them. It's crazy. The body just doesn't hold on to anything. So if you're on a standard American diet, maybe once every a year, maybe 2 times a year. If you're on an intermediate healthy whole food cooked food diet, anywhere from 2 to 5 times a year. And it's good to get a series every once in a while and instead of doing one sometimes. If you're on a raw food diet, 100% raw, truly raw, I've been on a raw food diet for 11 years. And it is, in my opinion, that it should be done once a month. And you will notice, this is one of the reasons how you can succeed on the raw food diet. That's how I did it. And I'll get into that when I talk about the spiritual stuff in just a moment. I know cancer patients that are trying to heal from disease. The more often you do it, the more you're like opening the floodgates. You might detox more. But I know people that have done it twice a month trying to heal from disease, 4 times, once a week to heal from disease. I know people that were doing it 3 times a week while doing enemas on the other days to heal from all sorts of degenerative diseases. And I've seen people with much results doing that. I'm not recommending doing it every day. I'm just trying to show you what's out there. Okay. One last thing about colon hydrotherapy. Some people get a colonic, and they're like, oh my God. Afterwards, they're just like, oh, I feel so horrible. I'm never doing this again. This is rare, so don't get scared. Most people are like, when I get a colonic, I get so spiritually high. It's just crazy. There's actually a lot of yogi gurus out there where they say, either do the colonics with the raw food diet, or I'm not going to accept you as a disciple. Because that combination together is so powerful, and receiving that universal cosmic energy, it's crazy. Trust me on that one. I'll get into that in a little bit. But why wouldn't someone feel good? It means there's like a lot of toxicity in the body, and you're kind of opening the floodgates, creating all this space of gas. It's not only solid waste, but you're removing all this gas. That's what we're really going for. And then what happens is, our cells contract and have this room to give off all this waste, and their organs throw in waste. It's like almost like a purging occurs. This is actually a good thing. But I knew some woman who was like really old, just getting into this lifestyle, had Lyme disease. She'd be like crawling to her bed after a colonic. It's just moving those toxins out, the disease out, getting it gone. There's this one, I know I got to stop the colon hydrotherapy, I'm going to run out of time. But there's this one woman who was on the brink of dying. I know one woman said, here's an enema bag, use it every single day. She started doing this, opened the floodgates. She was having stuff coming out of every orifice of her body. She was telling me, sorry for the details. But she healed herself after many months of doing that, and now she's a colon hydrotherapist. I just can't express to you how effective colon hydrotherapy is. There's just nothing out there. Okay. So, also, when you do colon hydrotherapy, it catapults your health to the next level. It speeds up the process. And if you do it more often, all those past food choices that you used to eat, you become more sensitive to them now, even quicker. So imagine one of us, anyone in this room, taking a tablespoon of arsenic right now. It's so poisonous we're going to end up dead on the floor in a short amount of time. But if we were to take 1 drop, we'd be fine. Don't try this at home. But then if you were to take another drop 3 days later and start increasing the dosage, maybe after a year or so, you can handle that tablespoon of arsenic and be fine because you adapted to it. And this is what we've been doing with diet all of our lives. For example, if you were to give an infant a hamburger, that would be like that arsenic, right? But what we do is we give them processed baby food, like a drop of the arsenic, and then they start, why is my baby crying? Why does she have a runny nose? She starts building up all these foods. Now they're a teenager. They're eating all these processed foods to where they adapt and accommodate the standard arsenic diet. And what happens is when you go back to a raw food diet, you start cleansing and cleansing. You become pure and clean like that baby again. And all those past food choices become more damaging to you. My book, Raw Success, kind of goes into the science of it. This is my second book. Raw Spirit, this is responsible for inspiring thousands of people to go raw. I get emails all the time. Has my story, talks about the spiritual stuff and a lot of the negative aspects, like digestive stuff. I wasn't expecting. I just went raw overnight as this excited kid to do something like that. Okay, so Okay. Okay, so you become more sensitive. For example, if I were to have a hamburger right now, I'd probably end up in the hospital. Well, most people outside could have 2 hamburgers and be fine. Now, if you were to give someone the same amount, like someone who's been on a raw food diet for 50 years, the same amount of hamburger you gave me, 50 years they've been cleansing on this lifelong fast. They've become cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. I seriously think they're not going to make it. I mean, you're not going to have a desire to have the hamburger, so don't get freaked out by that. But it's something to think about. This is probably my favorite raw food book. It's not even necessarily about raw foods. Hilton Hotima's Man's Higher Consciousness. He goes deep into like breaking down the human cell into like atoms and electrons, and he's like saying, food doesn't feed that. These like electrons and atoms are running around in a circle. It's not, food isn't feeding it. There's some magical substance going on. And he goes deep into the concepts of breatharianism, if that exists. In my opinion, it's a possibility. I don't know about this planet today and age, but this is what this kind of goes into. So keep an open mind when I give you this story real quick. There's this one man, his name was Luigi. I've seen him in other books too, who could not find a diet where he succeeded. And he realized if he ate 12 ounces of food once a day, he started to thrive. So that's all he did. He did this for decades and decades and decades. And what happened was, after about 50 years of doing this, his friend came up to him and was like, why don't you eat 16 ounces of food? What's the big deal? So he added 4 ounces of food, and it almost killed him. He would eat once a day 12 ounces of food and would fast for 24 hours every single day for all these years. There's about a 20% margin for error for anybody. Like, for example, you're breaking my 20% margin for error if I'm eating that hamburger. For this guy, it's only 4 ounces of food. And the further you take it and the cleaner you become, the more careful you got to be because there's less margin for error. This might sound crazy, but let's talk about consistency right now. Every person in here has a consistent diet. They eat the same kinds and quantities of food every single day. I mean, for myself, I eat about the same amount of carbs and fat every single day. For example, when I first went raw, I'd have 3 or 4 avocados without a problem. I cannot do that anymore. And I'm not saying I eat the same exact things every day, but it's about the same, if you know what I'm saying here. If you look at all, you might eat more one day, but there's a consistent diet, even if you're all over the place. Everybody has a consistent diet. If you eat more than that consistent diet, you don't feel well. When you eat at your consistent diet, you feel pretty good. When you eat less than your consistent diet, you feel great. When you consistently and permanently eat less than that consistent diet, this is when you start to detox. And what happens is when you cleanse this stuff out, your body becomes more efficient and needs less food to maintain high energy levels. So when you actually eat less than your consistent amount continually, you detox. And this is when that margin of error shifts and you start to need less and less food. Today, I would never eat more than half an avocado. I've been doing this for 11 years. My body just pushed me to this direction. I could not eat more than half an avocado today. Before, I was eating 3 or 4 avocados. Your body becomes, the longer you do this, the more efficient you become and the less food you need. Okay. So also, the more you leave out of your diet completely, without exception, the more sensitive you become to toxins, as the environment and stuff like that. How many people here have improved their diet and they realize cigarette smoke is bothering them now more? Yeah, it drives me crazy. And you could sense it damages you more now because you're more clean and sensitive. It's the same thing with the environmental pollution. Another story from this book right here. They took a bird and they put him in a glass cage without any air outlets whatsoever. And the bird kept breathing out carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide. It became more and more toxic, but the bird survived. They took this bird out and they put a fresh bird in, and without any chance to adapt, the bird died. Imagine taking someone from 100,000 years ago in this pristine environment and bringing them right here, right now. We're not meant to be on this planet. It's like when we eat poorly, our bodies have all these toxins. We're able to handle these toxins. So now when you're becoming cleaner and cleaner, you know, living in a city is not conducive to this lifestyle in the long run. It takes years to reach that parallel sensitivity. Like you go raw, it's going to take 10, 20, 30 years. The longer you do this, the more sensitive you become. So you don't need to run out of the city at the beginning, but it's a good idea to make a goal to get out of the city in the long run if you're going to truly be on a 100% raw food diet. So this is one reason why I like to tell people not to eliminate nuts from their diet. It's the most concentrated raw food for a raw foodist. And if you eliminate nuts, you're going to start it's like taking your diet to the next level. Like needing less, you're just eating water now, vegetables and fruits. No concentrated foods to hold. It kind of holds you back from becoming too sensitive. Okay, so we got to run through a few things. The spiritual stuff. Why would anybody want to eliminate so many foods from their diets completely without exception? Because the more you leave out, the more in tune you become to that energy. The number one reason why I stay raw today, I never had any health challenges. I just jumped over a 100% raw food diet overnight. Someone handed me this. I was working at MTV Networks in New York City. I didn't even know a raw food diet existed. I looked at this book, and I could not believe what I was reading. Become Younger by Norman Walker. It told me what certain foods were doing to my body, how they were damaging me, the refined sugars, the processed starches, animal protein. I couldn't believe it. I put that book down that night, and I went 100% raw the next day. And what happened was, all these zits came on my face. My nose started gushing, and I was running back and forth to the bathroom nonstop. And this is where I discovered colon hydrotherapy. I got a colonic. While I was on the table, I got a colonic. My mucus just went away while on the table. Air would go into my mouth. Prana, whatever you want, went straight into my brain and lungs without any obstruction whatsoever. It was this crazy bliss. The next day, my zits were gone. I would sleep so well. It was amazing. And then after about 9-10 days of that, the zits started to come back. My nose started to run. I was running back and forth to the bathroom nonstop. So I booked another colonic. I did this every 10 days. I was a young guy. Every 10 days I did this. This is 3 times a month I got a colonic. And I did that for 6 months. You would think a young guy like me would be completely cleaned out after doing something like that. Well, has anybody heard of a psyllium bentonite cleanse? Most people who take that stuff, they're like, oh my God, that's just like hardcore. Psyllium's a strong fiber husk. It has the potential to scrape that mucoid plaque clean. Bentonite's a volcanic clay. I was this young kid working with these colon therapists who were like the big guys in New York. They won't even do this cleanse like extreme like this. But I was this young kid. I'm like, I want to take it all the way. The Bernard Jensen psyllium bentonite cleanse. Keep in mind, I was a young guy. I did this juicing every single day, colonics every 10 days, raw food diet. 7 days you eat no food. You take a psyllium bentonite drink 5 times a day while doing a colonic in the morning and in the evening of every day, this cleanse, to keep it moving through you. Just keep it moving through you. That is key. And it evolves you to the next level. It's crazy. My colon therapist could not believe this black stuff that was coming out of my body. If you open to the book right here, I don't want to gross anybody out, but you'll just see like these long parasites and mucoid plaque coming out of people and people healing overnight. But something crazy happened to me for the very first time after that cleanse that I'd never experienced in my life before. When I got that last colonic, got the rest of that psyllium bentonite out, I started to get a vibration right here. And I had no idea what it was. The 100% raw food diet threw me into spirituality. I didn't even know a spiritual path existed. I was president of my fraternity in college. And I'm talking like the #1 partying fraternity that you can possibly imagine. It was crazy. And here I am, like closing my eyes, seeing things. I was vibrating. I didn't know what was going on. So I went to the bookstore. I'm like, where's the spiritual section? And I started reading through books, and I started learning about like all these different things, Eastern mysticism, and stuff. And I came across the chakra system. I'm like, whoa, this might be the third eye chakra. So I went to my brother, my friends, and my family. I'm like, this is the third eye chakra, what I've been talking about all this time. That didn't go over too well. They thought I was like malnourishing myself. I was getting all these tingly vibrations all over the place. But it was interesting because then I read this book. I missed it the first time, but because you're looking for what you're reading. He actually gave a scientific explanation for it. He was doing the same thing that I was doing. I talked to all these raw food authors. They had no idea what I was talking about. But he says the pineal gland is located right there as the organ that receives that universal cosmic energy. And the thalamus buffers it because it's so powerful it disintegrates, and it's sent to the hypothalamus to do whatever we got to do. And I was like, okay, I'm not crazy, my family and friends. It was good enough information for me. So ever since then, this has just been getting stronger and stronger. And whenever I meditate, putting my attention on a specific point, this just vibrates harder and harder. Like you pay attention on your breath or a sound. It's just meditation, unwavering focus. Like right now. It is just like, it's like this hollow feeling right in there. It's just orgasmic. Whew. That's what's going on. It's amazing. And me and Angela, my wife, she was 300 pounds and did this raw food diet. We meditate. We do this eye gazing technique where we just look right into each other's eyes. I look right into her pupil, and like we just start seeing things. It's just pretty cool. It's just like a good meditation technique. Oh, man, I have like 5 minutes. I don't know if I want to get into enzymes or more about the spiritual stuff. I got 1 minute. Oh, I could go like 5 more minutes? Okay, I'll try to do both. Okay, so I got hardcore into meditating. I was I'm an extremist, obviously. And what I did was I meditated, and I started to like see, I became more wise, I felt like. I began to like realize, oh wow, here's anger. It's like not part of me. Here's happiness, here's sorrow, all these things come up. And all of a sudden I began to notice there's this big pain, like a misery deep in my body. And I was like, it's like, have you ever been like driving by yourself, nobody's with you, and you're just like, ugh, this sucks. You know what I'm talking about? So I realized at the time, like, this is like a feeling, it's there. So what I did was I made my meditation technique. I wanted to get down to the bottom of this to look at that. So I would just stare at that. I like to call it a negative energy, an unpleasant feeling. So I would just sit there and look at it with unwavering focus. I'd be like, ow. Just like staring it down, like surrendering to it, like just being the misery. And then I began to notice something. It started to dissipate and dissipate and dissipate as I stared it down more and more until it just disappeared. And so I made my meditation technique to look at negative energies. So when that disappeared, I'd look throughout my energetic structure for more. And I would stare down these negative energies until they were completely gone. And there were a few rare times in my life, just a few times, probably the best moments of my life ever, when all negative energies were gone. And all that was left to meditate, what was it? It was just love. These were the best moments of my life. Seriously, I felt like a saint. Like, I was just walking, everything I walked by was just blessed. I was emanating love. It was like I actually came out of my mind. And I actually saw what was in front of me. If any of us right now just actually saw only what was in front of us and not what was in our heads, you would be like on a shroom trip or something from the college. You'd just be like, this psychedelic world. Look at the colors. It's like I'm walking through space. Oh my God, this is solid, and I'm touching it. Whoa. That shirt is just amazing. You would just be like, you would just feel that. So here I am, like, walking this planet, just emanate. I mean, it only lasted an hour, but I was just like walking around, like, just unbelievable, just feeling great. And all of a sudden, maybe like a car would drive by, and all of a sudden I would like feel a negative energy or something. And I'm like, I thought it was like emanating from that person. So what I did was I made my meditation technique to look at that energy and make it dissipate and heal it. And I felt like this is when you become a healer. The Buddhists actually say, first you heal yourself, and then you can heal the outside world. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And there's so many other things that, you know, have happened since then. Right when you fall into deep sleep, that's like the very magical point. If you could be aware at that point, crazy thing. I mean, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, but you're conscious, but your body's still asleep, you can't move, but like something very interesting happens, like maybe you have a spirit encounter or something like that. That is a very magical moment. And this is like, I mean, people do lucid dreaming, astrological projection, and just from experience, I've seen amazing things happen during that time. Healing from disease. The Health Food Institutes do 3 things to help heal people. We've already talked about 2 of them. What you leave out of your diet completely, without exception, is the way to ultimate health. Refined sugars and processed starches are the most effective. Nothing aids the body in detoxification and healing from disease. You just are removing these wastes out and out and out. Your body's just able to heal itself. And what they also do is they give everybody the ultimate nourishment, green vegetable juices, or wheatgrass, which I consider as a green juice. They don't use smoothies, which are good, but why aren't the health food institutes using them? Because they're not as effective and as therapeutic. They're not as electrically charged. They don't do the healing. There's no fiber. I'm so crazy about it. I take a nut milk bag and I strain even from a Green Star juicer, because when you drink the juice, there's no fiber obstruction. It just goes right into the body, into the bloodstream, and all the vitamins, nourishment goes into regenerating the tissues, glands of all the body and cells. Now, when you have fiber, your body has to work on that. And when it has to work on that, a lot of the nourishment goes into digesting that 4 or 5 hour meal time. You know what I'm talking? It takes that long to digest that food. And not all of it goes in the regeneration of your tissues, glands, and cells. Green smoothies are okay. You can get away with them. But just from my experience, in my opinion, what the health food institutes do, nothing compares to green juices. And yes, we do need fiber. I'm not saying just live off of juices. You have salads during the day when you're not juicing. Just like when I see someone drinking, Starbucks coffee and they don't have a bagel, I'm like, where's your fiber from? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so those are the 3 core principles the health food institutes use. Now we're going to talk about taking therapeutic enzymes or any type of enzymes on an empty stomach, and then we'll call it quits after that. Enzymes are God sent. It is like cheating the process. Okay. Digestive enzymes, therapeutic enzymes, they all do the same thing. It's just that some enzymes are more powerful than others. Things like nattokinase and serrapeptase, which are in this blend, also Vitalzyme, which is on the market, so you don't think I'm trying to sell you. These are the types of enzymes that actually you don't need as much, and they go to serious work. When you take enzymes with food, they digest the food. When you take enzymes on an empty stomach, they go into the metabolic processes of the body, which includes healing damage done to the body. Taking enzymes on an empty stomach have the potential to dissolve cancerous tumors. Every one of these powders in here are catalysts. They create positive chemical reactions in the body. You take a teaspoon or half a teaspoon of hundreds of catalysts, they go to work. When there's food in there, they have to digest the food. But what they do is they'll take, when there's no food there, it will take this molecule with that molecule, group it together and send it off to heal that and do that and do that. They just create all these positive chemical reactions in the body. A catalyst is like, let's say you are in California, you want to go to New York. If you're going to walk, that's fine. But taking an airplane is like taking a catalyst. I know cancer patients that have taken the recommended dosage is a half a teaspoon on an empty stomach, a few times a day. I have no cancer patients. I'm an extremist. I take about a teaspoon. I know cancer patients that have taken up to 5 tablespoons on an empty stomach of this stuff. You want to build up to that, and you want to be supervised and talk to someone about that. But I know of people that have done that sort of thing. It's actually scientifically documented. What they did was they took radioactive particles, coupled it with enzymes, so they could track the progress of them. And when taken on an empty stomach, it actually shows that it goes in the metabolic process of the body. I mean, they're God sent. It's like cheating the process. It's like you're going to live longer. A lot of people are probably thinking, I'm on a raw food diet. Do you need enzymes? The raw foods has the enzymes. No. But if you can get science at its greatest for true science, that's true health, and throw all these catalysts and cheating the process, trust me, I'm going to do it. I've been taking like a teaspoon. I've been experimenting with a little more lately just to test it out. This starts to vibrate more. Sometimes it just cuts my mucus. I go to an iridologist. They're just like, oh my God. It's profound what this does. And I've worked with people who have used these and have had profound results. And I'm going to tell you 2 stories and then we'll call it quits. It's actually 3. One's just a second long story. There was this one man who had multiple myeloma, which is an incurable cancer of the blood. It was very beginning stages. He got diagnosed. He went home, went on an intermediate healthy whole food diet, took a massive amount of enzymes, went back to the doctor 2 weeks later. They said, we must have diagnosed you wrong. This is impossible. Like, what's going on here? Like, it regressed to its earlier stages. Like, they said, they just diagnosed you wrong. That was their excuse. You know what I mean? Now, keep in mind that it was in the very beginning stages. If someone has multiple myeloma and they do this, it might take quite a longer time, if it does do anything. You know what I'm saying? But keep that in mind, too. There's this one woman who I went to college with, hadn't seen her in years. She had PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. She went to the doctor. Every time she had a baby, she tried to have a baby, she'd have a miscarriage. Happened 4 times. So she went to the doctor. They did tests. she had hundreds of cysts all over her ovaries. Hundreds of them. And they're like, we have to operate. You'll probably never be able to have children, but that's all you can do. She's like, no. That's all she wanted in life was a child. So what she did was she went online saying, how can I heal from PCOS naturally? And the only thing that came up was the raw food diet. And then she kept looking, the raw food diet, the raw food diet. And before she knew it, my picture came up. I mean, long hair now. And she's like, whoa, what is going on here? She kept seeing my picture. She emails me. She's like, Matt, is this true? Can you really heal yourself? Like, can I do this with food? I'm like, yeah, you have the potential to. There's no absolutes, but you can definitely do it. And it's very rare someone's actually willing to do what it needs to take to make this sort of thing happen, but she was willing to do it. She only did 2 colon hydrotherapy sessions. She went on an intermediate healthy whole food diet. She did juicing every day, and she took enzymes on an empty stomach. She could have done it without the enzymes, in my opinion. However, she emailed me in 4 months. I couldn't believe how fast that was. In 4 months, she says, I went to the doctor, and I did an x-ray, and there were only 4 cysts out of hundreds on there. I was like, oh my God, that's just crazy. I mean, and then what happened was, just recently she emailed me like a month ago of a picture of her new baby daughter, which is awesome. Okay, this is it, and then we're going to finish it off. There was this one woman who had a slow-moving cancer. It was lymphoma. She went on a raw food diet, did green juicing every single day, did colonics every 2 weeks, and took 5 tablespoons of enzymes on an empty stomach. We went back 5 months later to go get her checked, and there were no changes. Why do I tell you this story? Because I want you to see both sides of both things. I mean, why didn't she heal? I mean, there could be these things take time. Maybe she wasn't doing what she was saying she was doing. Maybe she has emotional issues. So the point of this story is there's no absolutes. However, from my experience and what I've seen from people doing this decades and helping heal people from degenerative diseases, it's the best shot, this process, that anybody has to heal from disease, in my opinion. And what those are is what you leave out of your diet completely without exception is the way to ultimate health. Refined sugars and processed starches are the most damaging. Nothing detoxifies and aids the body in cleaning it up, like colon hydrotherapy. Drinking the green juices, a variety of all different types of vegetables, they all have different things in them. Taking enzymes on an empty stomach. And I am Matt Monarch. And if you want to check me out on the Raw Food World TV show, go to www.therawfoodworld.tv. We do a TV show episode on YouTube every single day. Gets 3,000 hits a day, and it inspires thousands of people every single day. So I'll see you there. Thanks. All right. TheRawFoodWorld.tv.